Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's Jim Keller, everybody.
Yes, that was Jim Keller. That was Jim Keller at the Tenstorrent Day event. A video I'm in the process of putting together is from that event. And as part of it, managed to get a camera and a microphone in Jim Keller's face.
Nice, nice.
Got him to answer a few questions. Of course, you know, CEO, so they're going to be high level, but Jim Keller, so they're going to be Jim Keller answers, and they were. And we were talking about, so I asked him, what's your call to action? And he said, oh yeah, no, I don't really do those. I said, well, can I ask you to do one? Can I ask you to look into the camera and say, don't forget to like and subscribe? And so it's this theory I've had. It's this theory I've had. Back in the 70s and 80s, you used to get famous people, semi-famous people, politicians, whatever, to go on a radio show and they're to do a soundbite. Like, don't tune in to WHKL. That's Windows qualification program. But you know what I mean? The radio show, you know, don't forget to turn into 96.9 Chiltern FM or something.
Yep.
And we never get that anymore. So I thought I'd
not from like famous people. No.
No. From unfamous people, so nobody bothers. So
no, from like the hosts, yeah, but not from a third party, so to speak.
But you used to get movie stars doing it.
Yeah.
You know, just a soundbite. So I thought I'd
and
ask
nowadays
him.
It's
But no, nobody wants to be seen to be playing favorites. That's the thing. So, but yeah, welcome everybody to the Tech Poutine pre-show. We haven't done one in a couple of weeks because we were so busy from GTC. I went home after GTC. I had one other event in New York. Then I went home for 3 days. Then I went back to the US for 5 days for 3 more events. So we're going to cover a bit of that as well in this show. George is not at home. He's going to... Oh, he's being handed a drink.
Coffee.
Yes.
Because as you know...
I've got coffee in a glass, which is perfectly normal. Yeah. George, do you want to say where you are?
So I'm currently in Washington, but I'm here for PDX LAN, because a whole bunch of people I know. Well, that, and there's a whole bunch of people that I want to meet / kind of need to meet for reasons. And it's also play games, have fun, which is a nice change of pace from going from place to place to place, kind of like you do.
Chip. Yeah. It's something's going on. Washington's clearly a safe place.
Oh, that's sounds like an ambulance.
It's getting closer. I'm worried. Is everybody okay? It goes in and out, and I don't mean that's just the noise of an ambulance. George is on the run. That's why he's no longer in California. What are you smuggling across state?
But
what chips are you smuggling across state borders, George?
Oh, it is getting closer. You're right. Jeez. I'm smuggling some C-17s. Jesus, I'm gonna mute for a second.
It's I'm gonna be home for a few weeks now.
There we go. Okay.
Then it's gonna. Is this GTA 6? Are we watching it live action?
Yes, this is live action GTA 6.
Yeah.
But no.
In terms of future events, we're starting to come into Foundry event season now. So on the 23rd is TSMC Foundry event.
And the 29th is Intel.
29th is also Andy's Con. So that's the event, Andy's technology. They provide the
Yes.
Is it Microsoft, the RISC-V core from Microsoft's MTIA? Or is that Meta's?
MTIA is Meta. And that's that's Andy's, I believe.
Yeah, so they're having their event the same day as Intel Foundry.
Okay.
And then a few weeks later will be Samsung, and then Global Foundries will be after Hot Chips in August, as it usually is. They've already so we reported on a few weeks ago now. Global Foundries getting a new CEO. They've already reached out and said, "Hey, could we arrange an interview?"
Nice.
So that'll probably happen in August, and I'll promise to get it out. I promise to get it out before February this time. But yeah, should be fun. Everything my week's been revolving around optical, AI, optical, and Foundry, and I've got a feeling that over the next few years that's going to keep going that way. But yeah, people are saying Maya. Maya's always the AI chip because it's got AI in it.
Yeah, and then Cobalt is the CPU. MTIA is Meta, Facebook, and yeah. Speaking of, I was just gonna say. Well, speaking of the MTIA, a good friend of ours, Andy, got one. Managed to find some on eBay, or whatever the local thing is, and over where he is. They are.
It's so I was sent the link by an email. By one of the community saying this is like a PBT sample of the MTIA, but it was listed as I think Broadcom Samsung engineering sample or something. And when I responded, "What makes you think it's the MTIA?" They got back to me, but by the time it was like confirmed, the person who had the listing had already closed it, even though they'd only sold 3 out of 10. And I did see Brutus's heatsink removal, and it definitely is the MTIA.
Yes, well, actually, if you look at the hot chips, the 2024 MTIA hot chips presentation from Meta about it, you can see the card, and you could tell immediately that those were the same cards.
It's once you took the heatsink off, it's got 2 chips on it with 4 memory, 4 LPDDR memory modules around it. But because one of the chips is at 90 degrees, it's painfully obvious. And as far as so some people can identify vehicles or trains or planes by sight. We do it. We do the same with chips and PCIe. Boards. So Andy's event is on the 29th as well. I was just Cadence they're live. This is 5,000.
Welcome to streaming. No, I was just gonna say, speaking of Andy on Chips and Cheese, we have preliminary plans on doing a more sort of like NPU AI roundup, including some dedicated AI cards from some of the folks that you may have heard of.
PCIe or M.2?
For the most part, we're going to stick with PCIe, but for stuff like Halo, HAILO, I think they only have an M.2 card, so we're kind of going to have to use an M.2 card there.
It's that sort of weird boundary between data center inference and edge inference.
Yes.
And by the time you start testing, the model will be no longer relevant. Or somebody will say, you haven't done enough input tokens, or you haven't done enough output tokens, or you're measuring the wrong thing. You gotta measure before you gotta measure after you pre-fill the KV cache. And yeah, it becomes a long and arduous thing. So
yeah. Well, and then another big question is some of these. So like one of the cards that we have, Accelera, AXEL. It's AXEL. Is it Accelera?
Accelera.
Yeah. I'm bad at pronunciations. They are more CovNet focused, so that's like CNNs and like image.
Vision.
Yeah, basically image classification rather than LLMs. But what makes a card good for CNNs versus LLMs is a question that a lot of people have, and what do you optimize for one versus the other, and so it's a big question, and hopefully we'll be able to answer some of them.
The whole industry change from convolutional neural networks to transformers meant that if your chip didn't do transformers,
graph core.
Then you kind of get left behind. No, the Accelera guys are good to speak to. Fabrizio, the CEO, is always up for a chat. And I think I've also met their CTO back at CES as well. So it's they got a mention on the Poutine pre-show. We'll ping them. And maybe they can put another 5 chips in your lap. We'll see.
I mean, it would be cool to test the M.2 card and see what the difference is, but right now we've just been playing with the big M.2 card, not the 4-chip one, the single chip one.
So before we actually get into the full show here, like I say, we haven't done one of these in a couple of weeks because we've been on the road and lots of other stuff besides. So there has been a number of events and launches that I just want to cover very briefly here, some of which we may get to, depending on time permitting. We don't want to do another 4-hour show.
No.
So at the same time as NVIDIA's GTC, their tech conference was also SNUG, the Synopsys user group event. I did a video on it last year. And coming out of that was a really interesting discussion about HBM4 and custom HBM, particularly Nafea BShara from Annapurna. He was quite against the grain in his opinion, and to be honest, I think he was right. We may get into that. A teaser for people to stay on if you want to hear about HBM4. There was also the IBM Infrastructure Summit, which was essentially a pre-briefing event for Z17, which launched yesterday. So that's the system
2 days ago.
Yeah, that's the system that's built on Telum 2. I think George has chosen that for his topic this week.
No, I chose something slightly different, but yes.
Okay. Oh, yeah. We'll see if we can get time to cover it. Also had Intel Vision, so Intel's biannual event. This one was just analysts and customers, but the keynote was live streamed. So we got Lip Bhutan on stage. We can cover that maybe if there's time.
Okay. Did you watch?
We'll cover it if there's time.
Okay.
We also had the Optical Fiber Communications Conference, OFC. I did a video about this because of what NVIDIA said also at GTC. And I'm going to play this video here now. And we may talk about it later. Perhaps we should do a vote. Let's put it up here. There we go. Yep. So that is a optical compute processor playing an Atari. Using a neural network. The neural network's this thing on the side on the left. But that is an optical processor playing an Atari game.
Neat. It's actually really, so it's really cool that you're getting, so basically it's light, it's not ones and zeros. Well, it is, but it's light determining the ones and zeros, right?
Yeah, this is using MZIs, Mach-Zehnder interferometers, to essentially do the phase, in phase, out of phase, to do the math.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool.
And so this is actually a video I took at Supercomputing in November. That they was in the back room, and they said do not publish. However, they did just publish a Nature paper about this processor, showing that it was doing this stuff. So I reached out saying, "Can I post my video now?" And they said yes. So awesome. I may do a video. I may do a proper full video on the channel about that. But yeah, that was that was OFC. Tenstorrent had their dev day. So we're getting to Tenstorrent with their new cards. The topic I would do want to cover.
How long can it before I can run Doom, Ian?
The thing is, Doom is a set of processor instructions. This is a neural network interacting with something else running the game. So it's like an automated bot, but a decision automated bot, not it isn't running the game locally. That's the point. And yes, as Gregor said, somehow better than Elon. If you hadn't heard, Elon.
I had, yes.
So Elon claims to be one of the top 10 players in Path of Exile. Bearing in mind that those sorts of games you do actually need to play 10 to 18 hours a day for like years. So obviously he's paying somebody to play on his account. And then he started streaming from his plane to advertise Starlink, where he kept dying on the tutorial mission. So
well,
you ain't that good.
Did you see the chat was hilarious at that point in time?
The chat was also highly offensive, but perhaps
yes, that's why I'm not saying what was said. But
yes,
actually, he died multiple times because of Starlink lag, if I remember correctly.
No,
hilarious.
That's his claim.
Oh, okay. That's his claim.
And then the stream died.
Which here's the thing. Here's the thing. If he's advertising Starlink and it's because of and he's excusing it because of the ping, then that's a bad advertisement.
Correct. So, we've tariffs. I do want to talk about tariffs. Thank you for the $5, GreenProtagonist, during the pre-show. Cheese, did you get
get my coffee. I did.
He did. From what looked like a friend's mother. That's George's Riz through and through. So we will. I do want to speak a little bit about the tariffs, because that has been the topic of the past week, and I know it's frustrating. But a post went up today that I do want to cover. Llama 4, the next generation meta open source AI models, launched as well. So I do want to at least mention that. And then we also Nintendo Switch 2, which is influenced by the tariffs in the US. So I think now that we're 20 minutes into the pre-show, we should actually start the thing. So if we can do the switch over. You can just click the scenes on the left-hand side. There's a scene for main. There we go.
Nope.
Hey, Dom.
There we go.
So people are wondering, that's Dom. He's controlling the back end.
Yeah.
So welcome everyone to episode number 22 of the Tech Poutine. your often weekly show about chips and just stuff that we find interesting. It's not a general news show. It's about chips, damn it. I actually filmed myself throwing Core 2 Duo chips at my camera this week. And it actually comes across quite funny. We'll post that video soon. But my name is Ian. I run the Tech Potato channel and the More Than More Substack. And joining me, as always, is my co-host.
Hi, I'm George from Chips and Cheese. And Ian, the next Tech Poutine, that should be the intro video. Is you just throwing chips at the screen or at the camera?
Yeah, on a loop. Or no, reverse. They come out of the camera. And they come in my box. So, yeah, this show, because we haven't been on for a couple of weeks, we're going to cover a few topics. And the first one I want to cover is the tariffs. Obviously, being a Brit, it only affects me in the sense of any reciprocal tariffs that come my way. But as George, a passport carrying, red, white, and blue-blooded American, it will affect you.
Yes.
It will also affect all my clients. It will affect supply chain. How many trillions of dollars have been wiped off the market?
Well, wiped off, put back on, wiped kind of off again.
Yeah, and that's part of the deal. This rumor of a 90-day delay turned out to be fake, but is actually now happening, and all that other bullshit.
So, I have to hold my. I'm not going to be speaking much during this section because if I do, I'm going to get myself in trouble.
You should. So this is the article over at SemiAnalysis. I'll post a link to the chat if you want to follow along. So this was posted this morning. It's a 28-minute read. We won't go through all of it. But the point here is that exactly what is covered by the tariffs, and the team over at SemiAnalysis, Dylan and co, actually go over a lot of what's in the data center and how individual parts of the data center will change. And also to the point of the CHIPS Act, we actually just published a really nice article from John Martin on the More Than More Substack about where the money of the chip tax is going. It turns out that money will now go 25% less, or only 75% as far as it originally had. So again, I'm not gonna read through this, except to say that, just to highlight a few graphs here. This is the import tariff rate into the US from these certain countries based on the date. So China's had a 10% tariff since February 4th. That's been in effect. March 4th tariffs, 10% on China, 25% Mexico, 25% Canada. I believe some of that may have been delayed. And then the new ones that were announced effective April 9th are the big orange bars you see on the screen. So initially it was 34% on China, 32% on Taiwan, 27% on India, 26% on Korea, 24% on Japan, 24% on Malaysia, 20% on the EU, and like 97% on Cambodia, 10% on islands that constituted just as penguins. The math they did to work out the tax rates was relatively simple. However, I am led to believe, based on a rumor that I read that I cannot confirm at all, that some of the way that they did this is they asked GPT or a similar LLM, and it separated country by the international country, or it separated land masses by the country code of the landmass based on ICANN rules. This is why Gibraltar got a different tax rate to the UK. This is why Réunion got a different tax rate to France. That's why islands full of penguins and no people and no trade got a tariff applied. So,
is this just fine tariffs now?
The thing is, Actually, let's see if we can get some additional noise cancelling on you, George, just because there's banging. Okay, I'll try that. It looks like there is sound. Does sound like there is construction. So
there is.
Yeah, prepping for PDX LAN. So initially, China's tariffs was 34%. However, China then did a reciprocal tariff. So the administration decided to put another 50% tariff on China, making it an effective over 100, and in some cases it actually goes up to 125%. So
so what it was that there was the 20% tariff.
Yep.
That happened way back in February. Then there was the 34% tariff. Then there was an extra 50% added. Then there was an extra 21% added. So now it's a total of 125%, if I remember correctly. And mind you, all of these tariffs have now been paused for 90 days or 89 days as of filming.
Yes.
But
what it means is globally, the tariff rate globally is now 22%, the highest it's been since, here 1910. So it's higher than it was during World War I and World War II. And the thing is, part of the big upset is everybody who voted for the administration was expecting to have carve-outs, exemptions because they voted for the team. The amount of stories I'm hearing about companies saying, "Oh, revenue is going to pour in because we're going to get an exemption and our competitors aren't," only for them to realize you ain't special just because you put an X in a box.
And Evil Fandango, slight correction. All the tariffs except for China have been paused for 89 days. Let me make that quick correction.
So the new reciprocal tariffs will not apply in the following cases: goods originating from Canada and Mexico, because they already had a trade deal. That's what the 25% is in place. Steel and aluminum or aluminium products, along with their derivatives. So there was a debate here because at Intel Vision, I spoke with Kelt from Falcon Northwest, a boutique OEM PC maker in the US. A guy that I've spoken to for years but never actually met in person, so it's great to see him. He was saying how then when we were speaking to him, even though his products are made out of steel and aluminum, because they're machined, he will get tariffed. So a case, again, it's weird. This says along with their derivatives, but he said he just got an import of cases and they got tariffed as if it was the full, and he's looking at a 75%. This is before they did the plus 50%. So yeah, a $200 case would now be $450.
So
things may change. This is all very fluid.
It sounds like the actual steel import is not being tariffed unless there's specific machining work done to it, which is very weird.
Yes.
Okay.
But we'll get into the weirdness when we get to semiconductors later. So yeah, there's some other things here that the reciprocal tariffs don't apply to. And products with US content, this is an interesting one. So the 10% baseline and country-specific tariffs apply only to the portion of the products made outside the US, as long as at least 20% of the product is derived from US-made or US-processed parts. So if Intel made a chip and packaged it in Malaysia, then brought it back, they would only pay the tariff on the packaging, not on the chip, full value of the chip. And then column 2, countries, including all those that voted against the war in Ukraine, as you might expect. And goods under $800 are currently allowed duty-free entry, but that's typically personal goods, not.
So the D- threshold will mostly affect stuff like those. I can never remember.
If you're buying one.
Those, no. So what it mostly affects is like the clothing industry, like the cheap clothing industry from China. So like the whole trad fad thing.
Yeah.
That's mostly what's being affected as far as I understand it.
However,
of course, other things will be hit, but
so all of that may move to Vietnam now because China will not be exempt from this threshold. And then we get into exempted items listed under Annex 2, which includes pharma, lumber, select minerals, and some semiconductors. Then in Annex 2, you have things like 18 different sets of photosensitive diodes and amplifiers in here. For some reason, there's a need to separate all these out. So
my guess is the annex was written in so that they could do specific classifications for specific device types
and specific vendors.
We'll
get into that in a second as well.
Okay.
So yeah, the article goes through, and then we've got key minerals, things like tantalum, cobalt, bismuth, gallium, yttrium, chromium, osmium, ruthenium, all industrial applications and some applicable to semis. Now, there is a loophole for GPUs. And the loophole is basically get your stuff built in Mexico. So a good number of server builders, let's see if we can get down here. So a good number of the people actually building things like the GB200. So we're talking about board level and rack assembly.
Mm-hmm.
So this is companies like Foxconn, Wistron, WeWin, Quanta, Supermicro. A lot of them have assembly facility. Now, there's also different types of assembly. I'll gloss over that. So this is board level, which basically means putting components on a board, SMT. And then you've got rack level, which is actually, putting stuff into servers and then putting the screws in. About the way to get around Brazil import tax is by you ship the system and 4 screws to a factory in Brazil.
Yes.
You put the screws in, and then you can say made in Brazil.
Yep.
A similar thing here. So, yeah, the team here says that NVLink within GB200 racks, so, Blackwell racks, are also exempted from tariffs via Mexico due to the same reason as GPUs. But the cables and connectors, which are manufactured in China, may not be.
Okay. If I wanted to put some sort of geopolitical strategy behind this, which, oh dear God, I don't want to, but if I was to try and take a geopolitical stab at this, what it sounds like this is trying to do is potentially move that lower cost manufacturing that wouldn't be profitable here in the US down to Mexico, so that if it's at least not here in the US, it's at least here on the North American continent, versus potentially having it in China. Now, is that actually what's going on? Probably not, but I can at least see a potential reasoning there.
It's moving jobs from China to Mexico so people don't come to the US. So the thing is, for a lot of this stuff, a good chunk of the supply chain has already moved out of China. And this is because of a China plus one strategy, basically dual source your manufacturing. same company, just two different locations doing the same thing, essentially. And here it says overall, the tariffs are likely to only apply to 8% of the bill of materials cost of a Grace Blackwell 200 system. Which is that's still going to increase some, but not as much as perhaps what people feared in terms of just the value of the system. It says here, AMD benefits because the CPUs are exempted from tariffs and relies on major server OEMs, which have already moved their manufacturing of the servers, their rack level, board level and rack level, to Mexico and the US. Amazon uses two companies for their assembly in Mexico. Google uses Celestia, and they have Mexico, and Broadcom, their partners are in Mexico. So in terms of the hardware, it seems relatively fine. So the tax on GPUs may not happen, as in consumer GPUs, if the GPU is put together in Mexico. If the GPU is put together in Taiwan, like at the ASUS factory, right, they may... The
tariffs would apply.
The thing is, the money right now is in server sales, not in consumer. Sorry, consumers, you don't matter as much as you think you do. To Intel, you do. To the wider market, you don't.
Yeah.
So the knock-on effect here is data center, power delivery, generators, switches, chillers, lighting, fire protection, construction. A lot of that is still, in Asia. So the thing is, it depends, depending on how your building is constructed, that changes what your co-location costs. And it just means that the colo cost goes up in terms of so this is just getting a rack in a data center, and then you pay a monthly fee for having hosting there, physical hosting, and whether you pay for management or not. So that's what I mean by colo costs, physical hosting. But also,
ironically enough, that's what the construction is building up a co-location for servers here, which is
right.
So that's part of the construction noise you're hearing.
If you're actually just building a data center for yourself, they've got some estimated tariff increases here in the data center model. And they go through some of the they go through individually each of these parts. I won't dwell on them. Optical modules, so networking seems to have quite a much bigger exposure, just because they seem to be constructed mostly in Asia as well. There's some Mexico, some EU, and other, but everything else is going to be highly part of that. Shipment volume here, companies like Coherent, Fabrinet. Fabrinet is actually 100% Thailand, which is interesting. But
interesting.
But again, some of these companies will now have to apply the China +1. Your Discord keeps beeping. Can you mute it?
It's not my Discord.
Is it somebody else in the room?
Yes. It's another Discord thing going on that I don't have control over that. I can mute.
No, get them to mute. We got you, Octo, to do it. But the key thing here is actually semiconductor equipment. So this is the ASML machines. This is the Applied Materials machines. This is the Nikon. This is the TEL, the Amcor, ASE, all those companies who build machines that get put in the fab. they are going to experience a lot of tariffs because they have a lot of exposure to components made in these various countries. So critical wafer production tools are only available as imports for US fabs. ASML and Tokyo Electron are the two most important foreign suppliers. And in terms of raw wafers, the US doesn't really make any. In terms of photoresists, they pretty much all come from Japan. It just goes to show you that semiconductors is truly a global supply chain. So when somebody jams it up, everybody gets screwed. And the upshot of it is, it looks like that data center build out is going to be, and that's the end of the article, data center build out is likely going to cost 25% more. So, Mr. Viptis says, even though ASML is in the Netherlands, parts are from Zeiss, Trump is in Germany, Cyma is in San Diego. Some of the construction happens at ASML. Some of the construction some of the stuff happens in Connecticut. But the point is, it's how many millions of individual parts go into a machine?
Way too many.
Dozens of millions.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I was going to say the EUV lasers are actually made basically an hour south of my house.
Yes.
For
Cyma.
ASML. Yep.
ASML now own them, or have for like 10 years now.
Yeah, but my point is that the mirrors are made in Germany. The lasers are made south of me. It's everywhere.
But what it does mean is, right now we have fabs being built out in Ohio, though delayed till 2030. We have fabs being built out in Taylor, Austin. We have new fabs and new R&D facilities being built out in Phoenix. Intel is still expanding New Mexico. Some of this is construction to begin with. Then it's tools and equipment. A lot of these companies have CHIPS Act money as well. So right now, they are all getting massive. Yeah, they're going to end up being tariffed to the hilt. Let me also share this. Share the screen. Yeah, so this is the More Than More Substack. You could just search by go to it and search my name on Google. But we just published an article called "The CHIPS Act Enabling the USA." And this is from John Martin. You may remember John as one of the lead writers for Linus Media Group. I believe he was in charge of TechWiki or Short Circuit, or one of them. And yeah, I commissioned this piece for him to talk about where we started in CHIPS Act, and essentially where the money is going, because it's a chunk of money. There has been talk about whether the money should be taken away. Can you do that, or should there be a CHIPS Act 2? And we just go through here what came. This is how the House voted on the CHIPS Act as well. These are all yeses. So it's not blue, yes, red, no. It's blue and red are all yeses. And that's how it passed. Intel's down 7% today. I thought it went massively up earlier. Either way, we go through.
The stock market is just vibes at this point.
Yeah. So don't have your money in it if it's just vibes. But yeah, so we go through here, and the point is, it's not all 52.7 billion for fab build out. Some of it's some of it's for Corning. For photo masks and mirrors inside EUV machines. Some of it is vacuum pumps.
Also glass.
Some of it is solar cells. Yeah, R&D consortium. chemical production, especially high purity isopropanol, right? This is for rinsing and drying wafers, right? So it's not all equipment. Some of it is R&D money. So not all of the 52.7 billion, well, yeah, 225 million for silicon carbide. Analog devices is 105 million for sensors, right? But it does mean that the effect of all this money is not going to be as much as originally thought, and because fab build out and costs, and some of the CHIPS Act money is more like some of it's grants, some of it's tax breaks, some of it's loans, depending on how much you spend within a given time, and it's changing day to day, which makes all of this probably going to be irrelevant tomorrow or whenever you decide to watch it. So, yeah, tariffs, woo. I don't know how much it's going to affect me being in the UK.
Well, lucky you, I guess.
Hasn't so Switch 2 is still going to be launched on the same day, but the pre-orders in the US have been delayed. And I suspect it's going to be a case of they don't know how many units they're going to supply to the US for launch, because that may have changed. Because normally when there's something like this, it gets announced far in advance such that you can adjust your schedules and whatever, because this is almost day to day. We've heard of companies that have already laid off workers because of all these announcements. Yeah, and the argument being from the administration is that countries are crawling on their hands and knees to get exemptions. So maybe if you buy some crypto, some Trump coin, you may get preferential treatment. It's all a joke at this point, and the legal system. Oh, did you also hear they disbanded the cryptocurrency fraud team? So yeah, I'm
gonna ask that we get off this topic, because if we don't, I'm gonna start ranting, and I'm gonna get myself into trouble. Because I'm gonna start saying some stuff.
So Joseph says, "Isn't it kind of pointless to make an analysis of tariffs if they come and go in a matter of days?" Because at the end of the day, stuff is going to be happening, and whether it's A or B or C or D, at least the reason why the stock market is the way it is right now is because people are trying to predict what's going to happen. And you could say, well, I'm just going to weigh it out and see what happens at the end. Maybe the end doesn't come for the next 4 years or 40. So, yeah, it is what it is. So that was the, I wanted to cover that. I think we should move on to some Tenstorrent stuff. Yes,
away from the doom and gloom and into the happiness, to where I'm much more comfortable.
Yeah, just don't ask if anybody's stuff is being has got tariffs on it. Let me bring this up here. And let me share. Present, share screen. Will this show up? No. I have to do a full window then. No, full screen. Here we go, screen 2. So, this is, I think, actually the last slide. Yeah. I'm going through it. So.
Oh, hello, Ayar.
Why has it got those pictures on it now? Oh, stuff is copied over. Wrong. Anyway, so Tenstorrent had a developer day in downtown San Francisco in the Dogpatch Studios. And the whole point of a developer day is typically, let's get a bunch of developers and teach them how to program on our stuff. And so they had talks there from people who had written research papers about the Tenstorrent hardware, because one of the benefits of Tenstorrent is you can go buy it now if you want an AI device that isn't NVIDIA. It's all open source on GitHub, pretty much. And also the people who all managed to reverse engineer it were there and just happened to be employed. I saw our good friend Felix. Oh, somebody's smoking outside. Great. Yeah, so fun times. But yeah, they were also there. My cat's deciding to sit on top of my computer. Last time she did that, my CPU hit 96 degrees. Let's see how it goes. And the new chip is Blackhole. So we had Grayskull, Wormhole, Blackhole. And Blackhole is the
and
next
if I remember
generation.
correctly, their chiplet is Quasar, which is hilarious. I love the space naming.
Yeah. This is what the architecture looks like for a Blackhole die. So in the same way we might approach a GPU, talking about SMs, what the Tenstorrent chip has is a 2D grid. And some of these are taken up by their AI processors called Tensix. I think these are like Tensix++ in the internal naming. You also have RISC-V processors on the right-hand side to do compute. Those are Sci5 X280 cores. This is not their custom Ascalon core yet. That comes next gen. They've bumped up the memory for this generation. It's now up to 32 gigabytes of GDDR6 at a 512 gigabytes per second speed. On board is 210 megabytes of SRAM, which is more than Grok, which is hilarious. It has a Taurus NOC PCIe 5 Gen 6 and up to 400 gigabit per second Ethernet. And people turn around and say, hey, isn't 32 gigabytes a small amount of memory for an AI data center inference chip? And the whole point is that you only do enough compute on a single chip to only need 32 gigabytes of memory at GDDR6 speeds. They don't use super expensive HBM, but they also don't use dirt cheap LPDDR. And you get a nice balance of capacity and bandwidth. And with all the Ethernet connections, the idea is that in a system, we talk about scale up. How much can you make the system look like one chip? Right. This is why NVIDIA does the big rack scale stuff. And Tenstorrent argument here is we do scale up through Ethernet, so you don't need massive switches top of rack. But instead, you can have 1,000 chips or an exapod of chips, 9,000 chips, and it all looks like one big chip. So. So we do see some of the questions. We'll get to that in a second. These are the products that you can go buy, and the first three are already on website.
Real quick, it doesn't have more SRAM than Grok. Grok is 230.
Oh, 210, 230. But it does have GDDR.
Yes, and that's the big advantage, is the fact versus something like Grok, which is SRAM only. Something like the Tenstorrent card, you can fit a big, like a 14B or a quantized at 16 FP16 or 30B approximate model quantized to FP8.
Well, when you say B, you mean billion parameters.
Yes. I mean billions of parameters.
Yeah.
So yeah. Whereas with Grok, you can only fit what 110 million FP8, FP16, and about 210 FP8. So
if you want to run a small Llama model, you need a rack.
Actually, times 100 factor. Excuse me. But yeah.
Yeah.
You need a full rack of it. Yeah.
So I mean, these chips, what they have the bin up card and the bin down card. So the bin down card is the cheap one. This is a Blackhole P100A. A is for active cooling. This has only 120 out of the 140 tensor cores. It's slightly less on memory because one of the memory controllers isn't used. They're basically harvesting the binning, right? And for this, you get a dual slot 300 watt card. It doesn't have the Ethernet ports on it. So this is just designed to be a standalone card that you can do some dev work on. Then you have the P150A or the P150B. A for active, B for not active. They just call it B. So a passively called for data center and fan push through. This has got the full 140 tensor cores in the card, the full 32 gigs of memory. So it has 4 800 gig ports. So 3.2 terabytes per second output. So this could be a switch card, which is insane. People have said, why would I buy this for the AI? I could just use it for networking.
So if you go to their site, you can't. This is actually one of my... It says strictly for connecting other Blackhole cards.
Right. Right.
Which,
so now, maybe.
Okay. So I guess there's a rant not a rant, but there's a discussion that I want to have about this and about 200G SerDes. But yeah.
The thing is, Tenstorrent is using the same chip, whether you want compute, whether you want memory, or whether you want networking. It's designed to do all three. That's why they don't need top-of-rack switches. That's why they can get a terabyte of memory in a single server.
Mm-hmm.
And again, all the networking, and this is essentially so you solve the scale-up problem by making it all scale up. But in order to get the full fat card with all the connectivity, you do need to pay, a bit more, 40% more. If you want 4 of them in a box that's liquid cooled and actually looks quite nice, we have a video on this. We did a video of the previous generation wormhole. The price has also come down, but it's now 12 grand. Soon there will be the P300 card, and there'll be a P300A and a P300B for actively cooled and bot actively cooled. Why they called it B rather than P, I don't know. But this will just have 2 chips, 2 lots of memory, 600 watts. No price on that yet, but I suspect it will be closer to 2,000, if not more. But these all based on the architecture design, 10.6 cores and Sci5 RISC cores. Now, Tenstorrent is being known as a RISC-V company, building their own RISC-V cores. That's in the next set of chips. And so they did have a session on Ascalon, their new design. We know about the architecture already. It kind of looks like this. RVA 23, 2.5 gigahertz. They're going after 18 spec int. But this is a core they will license, but they will also build chiplets themselves.
So there was a comment in the chat from Captain K about why don't they just build a CPU core and beat AMD and NVIDIA, and it's not that simple. For one, the cores are only clocking to 2.5 gigahertz for now. That doesn't really, it's first gen, right? You're not just going to come out of the gate switch, like that's not really how that works. Will it be a performant core? Of course, I absolutely expect it to be performant in its class, and very likely the highest performance RISC-V core available on the market when it comes to market. Yep. Currently, that's P550 right now, but I fully expect Ascalon to succeed that and bring all nice stuff like RVA 23 support, which includes vector support, which P550 doesn't have, etc., etc. But you don't just beat AMD and NVIDIA in a single gen.
I think the spec-int number for AMD and Intel is around 2022, and so they're hitting 18.
That's the issue, is that it's spec 2006 per gigahertz, which is fundamentally a really weird metric.
It's suitable in certain circumstances, but yeah, no, I know what you mean. It always depends about the binning anyway. So,
well, not just that. It depends what clock speed are you running at, what memory are you running.
Well, that's what I mean by binning, right?
Oh, yeah, okay.
So, but Ascalon is part of a family. The 8 wide is at the top here. There's going to be down to a 2 wide, and all of this will be available, as IP. Then there's a software stack. There's a better picture of this later. Yeah, here we go. So this is showing that depending on whether you want to work at the PyTorch layer, which is the second one down, or you got the Forge, or the NN, or the Metallium, or the LLK, these are all designed, to be abstractable. So if you want to rewrite a layer, you can. And they said on the day that another AI chip company is using their compiler. So another AI chip company other than Tenstorrent has taken part of this software stack to use for themselves, and it's all open source. Jim also says that he is open sourcing the patents for Tenstorrent. And he said a lot of this stuff is already out there. People know it. So let's just open source it and just be done with it. So, open wins, basically. And they have a number of partners going on. So PCIe cards, quiet box, there's going to be a loud box. There's going to be cloud and cloud providers, and a Galaxy supercomputer. This is the hardware. I didn't actually get I don't think there's the video of this in my backend. Let me see if I can find it.
So I'm seeing while you're finding that, I'm seeing some chat about Ascalon. And here's the thing, right? Actually, one quick second. Because I brought it with me. So Here's the P550. And let me tell you, it's faster to cross-compile on a first-gen, on like a second-gen Zen 2 system than it is, or Zen 2 system, I meant second-gen Zen, than it is to compile stuff on this system. I expect Ascalon to not be like that. I expect it to, when you go to compile something, you will compile it on Ascalon, not on a Zen 2 system cross-compiling. So.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if I can. So this is me biting the card, obviously.
Of course, you have to get a taste.
And so the Galaxy, this is their unit of server compute. This is if you want to buy a server, it's called a Galaxy. They call it like a Galaxy supercomputer. And you remember back when we saw the initial Grayskull wormhole designs, it was weird because it was 48 volts DC. So it turns out that the 48 volts DC was so close to the networking that you had cross talk.
Ooh.
And so you had to deal with that. But also, if you took out the networking and accidentally moved over and touched the 48 volt, you suddenly got 48 volts through your networking.
Yep.
So this is more like a traditional server. This is I believe it's a 6U, and it has 4 1.5U trays. Each tray will have 8 black holes. And if I can get this to play, I'm not sure if it's going to be sound. Yeah, so that looks just like a normal server, right? How that builds out.
Yeah, it's standard Blade server.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's some more cards, and people can't stand still.
I will say the cards are quite pretty. Like in terms of aesthetic design, I know that doesn't really matter, but they are pretty cards.
The P300A at the back which is the two chip, is a tri-slot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. Okay.
600 watts with the blower.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. Making it 3. As much as people say you shouldn't go beyond full height, if you're doing 600 watts and you're doing a blower, go 3 slots, please.
And chances are you're only putting either 1 or 2 into a workstation. So,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Viptis says, are there water blocks you can buy for the cards? There may be. However, the design of the cards is all going to be open sourced. So everybody will have the exact dimensions to go build. They actually also are partnering with OEM boutique designers like Falcon Northwest to do workstations. So there will be custom versions of this as well. Yeah, so that's the hardware. This is their portfolio. So, you know, we've gone through the hardware. They're going to sell cards. They are in the process of building 4 different chiplets. A CPU chiplet with Ascalon, an AI chiplet with next-gen 10.6 cores, and 2 customer chiplets based on various configurations of IP.
Well, we know that LG announced a chiplet with Tenstorrent cores. I can't remember the exact
automotive
part. Yeah, it's an automotive chiplet. I can't remember the exact name of the product line, but yeah, it's an automotive chiplet, and which is awesome. It's awesome to see that Tenstorrent is getting that IP to its customers for integration into their own products.
I think also Boss Semiconductor have a chip. I saw it at CES. I've got a picture somewhere of it. One other thing, because these chips do have CPU cores in them, they can technically be hosts. That's why in the Galaxy server you didn't see a CPU.
So this is to make a more consumer analogy. This is a APU, not a GPU.
Yes. No. This is a Xeon Phi. So.
Yeah. No, it's Xeon. Yeah, it's Xeon Phi.
Or is that Bolt? I believe these are in 6 nanometer. I know next gen they're going to Samsung 4, SF4X.
Mm-hmm.
A Grendel, the CPU chiplet, will be in 4X.
Yep.
So yeah, the cards are now on the site. The White Hole Galaxy is priced somewhere between 75 to 100K. That's the server unit, the 6U. The Blackhole will be 125K soon. And again, open sourcing the whole process architecture. The reference model will be based on GitHub. What Tenstorrent implements may not be the base model, just so you're aware. But all the patents around the base model design will be published. And this is their scorecard. Basically, Jim went on stage and said, here's where we are as a company, and I'm going to rate my employees now right in front of you. They now have 800 employees, which is insane, more than. And realistically here, what has been done well, openness, price, and the team. What needs work is performance, get faster, compatibility, support mainstream models, and scale. Build out models, from 32 cards to 1,000 cards. The one thing that's new is that apparently the customers that are already deploying Tenstorrent or already playing with it are saying, how about training? How about training with GDDR, which isn't a normal thing? So this is currently in the early process phase. And you remember AMD has said 2025 is the year for training for them, whereas NVIDIA's turned around and said 2025 is the year for inference. And we all know that in the future, 90% of AI is going to be inference. But at some level, some of these cards need training. Now, these cards were built to be inference cards. So it's going to be interesting to see where the training sits.
Although
on that.
I do remember a conversation I had at ISC 24 about how they were, even at that point in time, looking into fine-tuning. So like running fine-tuning on the cards, which is a much more training-like workload than it is an inference workload. So even back then, they were sort of thinking about training in the not training full-on models, but taking a model and then just fine-tuning it sort of sense.
Yeah. This is arguably my best photo of the event. Yasmina, that is her god shot.
Yep.
So that was fun. That was a Tenstorrent launch event.
Sort of coming back to the thing that I was talking about earlier, the 4x800G connection. It says on the site is only for connecting to other Blackhole cards. Now, to me, there's two potential reasons. One, they don't have the full Ethernet like TCP stack ready yet. So plugging it directly into a switch may not work.
So the key phrase there is ready yet.
Yet, yes. I think that it will eventually be ready, or it will come with the next generation. If they can't like do it in software. Which I don't see why they couldn't, but I'm not an expert on that. The other reason is, and I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but do you know if they're using 100G SerDes or 200G SerDes?
I want to say it's probably 100.
Okay.
I believe it's our Tariffs IP. I saw that on the internet somewhere, but I haven't verified it.
Okay. So I asked that because, oh boy. So IEEE split the 800G and 1.6T spec away from the 200G SerDes spec. So what that is that there's 800G and 1.6T Ethernet. That's the actual Ethernet spec for running line rate 800 gigabit per second Ethernet or 1.6 terabit per second Ethernet. That's the actual like Ethernet protocol, right? And usually with that protocol comes a SerDes or a serializer,
deserializer.
Yes. Basically the physical part that actually runs all the networking, all the analog stuff. However, they've split that into two separate 802 1.3 specifications. I can't remember what they are. I want to say one's D is 801.11 DJ, and the other is 801.3 DE, I think. Don't quote me on that. But because of the split, while the 801.6T spec has been ratified already, the 200G SerDes stuff is not actually ready for publication until next year, which has been causing some problems with people wanting that faster SerDes so that they can expand networking for AI, but that spec just isn't ready. And part of it is because if you have like a ConnectX NIC, it needs to work with an Arista switch, which may also need to work with a Pensando card, which may also need to work with a Cisco switch, so on and so forth. So I understand why it's been taking them some time to ratify that standard. However, and this will sort of tie into one of our boxers in the later port. But some, including NVIDIA and UA-Link, have already created a 200G specification so that they can go to faster networking.
It's if you know what system you're going to run in, you don't need to worry about IEEE.
Exactly.
It's only when you have to play nice with everyone else. And HBM4 that's why custom HBM4 is being talked about, because the spec is lagging behind the demand. But we can get into that later. So with that, we are an hour in. I've just lost all my windows as usual. So just to say that, thank you guys for watching. This is a unsponsored Tech Poutine. Realistically, the sponsors are me and George. So please do like and subscribe. Please do head on over to our Substacks, and if you're that way inclined, you can go get merchandise. There should be a new Blackhole mug on the store at some point.
Ooh.
Let me see if I can bring it up here. It's funny. Look, I should have had this ready, but I mean, it's. Let's put it live now. This one. It's. Let me share screen. Let's share a tab. So this is the new potato mug with a Blackhole logo instead of a wafer.
I love that. Okay, I may have to get myself one of these. As a space person, I love this. So
this is the partner I use for this. They have distribution centers: US, Canada, UK, Europe, Australia. So hopefully it'll be one local to you. Previous mugs I've sold have been in the 11 or the 15 ounce. There is now a new 20 ounce option, whatever the hell an ounce is.
Basically this size approximately. Holds about this much liquid.
The 15 ounce actually has, of my regular design of the mug, has actually been selling really well. And people loved the fact that it was bigger than your average. So this may be the Ajit Pai version. I'm still actually waiting for one of my samples to come through. Tenstorrent actually ordered 25 of these for their office in Austin. It's 660 mils, so it's more than a pint and a bit. So as opposed to this, which is the Tenstorrent Get Together 2025 Stein that they sent me.
Nice.
So yeah, that is now available. I can just stick a link in as well, so you can go direct. Yeah, the shop does have other stuff. I did actually get an email saying that they calculated the stitching wrong on the D0 or die hoodies. So if you're an XL, it now costs a bit more. Sorry about that. But yeah, this is the mug that usually goes on, and this is Jeff with the mug. And this mug's quite popular. There's a Cerebrus version of the mug as well. And now there's the Blackhole potato. And the reason because it's called 2 is because the first design didn't really work. I may have mentioned this last time, but I've actually got a couple of the fitted long potato tees now, and they're really nice. They're really nice. So yeah, compared to the short sleeves, I actually prefer the longer sleeves one. And I'm not saying that because it simply costs more. I'm just saying I actually just like it more.
See, I prefer short sleeves.
No, I know. I like the short sleeve, but I think this is just a better fit. So compared to the other two, I'm thinking I may actually take those off. We'll see. It's yeah. So yeah, this podcast isn't sponsored except by us. Though we do take sponsorships if you're that way inclined and interested. Now, next topic. George can lead this one because you've clearly done a lot more research than I have.
So our next topic, is Google TPU v7, also known as Ironwood announcement. So, yeah, looking at the it has, so just to get the timelines in order, Google's first publicly available TPU is TPU v2. And then there was TPU v3, TPU v4, and then with TPU v5, they split it up into TPU v5e and TPU v5p. TPU v5e was designed for inference, and TPU v5p was designed for training. With TPU v6, we only ever got TPU v6e, or Trillium. But now with TPU v7, it seems like they've reunified E and P back into just one unit.
So one chip for training or inference, and
yes.
It looks kind of familiar.
Yes. I couldn't refine the picture.
Sorry, this statement 24x the time.
Yeah, I'm gonna rant about that in a second. So
yes, you and I both.
Yes. So this design is chiplets. It has what looks like 2 compute chiplets and then an IO chiplet up top. So three chiplets. But yeah, so going down the page, they announced this at Google Cloud Next.
I did get invited this year.
What's interesting is that they're also talking about inference a lot here. Now, if you go back up.
Sorry.
Yeah, there we go. Nope. Yeah, perfect. The chips individually has just over 4.6 exaflops or 4,600 teraflops of FP8 compute. We don't, and that's peak FP8 compute. We don't know if that's dense or sparse, but that's up there with Blackwell, assuming that is a FP8 dense number. It will now have 192 gigabytes of HBM3E running at 7.2 gigatransfers per second for a total bandwidth of 7.2 terabytes per second. Again, very similar to Blackwell, slightly reduced bandwidth numbers. The reason for that is likely so that Google can pick from multiple vendors, so that they don't just have to go to a single memory manufacturer.
So just for context there, NVIDIA is pretty much all SK Hynix right now because that's the only one that's validated. I thought they were all SK Hynix.
I thought they were Micron.
AMD is mostly Micron.
No, AMD's SK Hynix. Although they do have supply from everyone else. SK
Hynix has like 70% of the HBM market right now.
Huh. Okay. Well, I guess we'll have to follow that up.
But
yeah, I thought it was Micron. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The lower speed is going to allow Google to get from multiple vendors and also potentially pay less because there's less fighting for a lower bin HBM SKU. And then this is going to scale up to 9,216 individual TPUs. Captain K, AMD, Samsung, Micron, and SK Hynix. I have actually seen an MI300X MI300X system with Hynix and Micron, and then in our MI300A system, it was all Samsung. So they've literally pulled from everybody. But anyway, yeah, so that's probably why they picked reduced memory bandwidth on that. Again, scales up to 9,216 TPUs per pod, which is nearly 10 megawatts of power for that pod of just over 9,200 TPUs. And they've increased the bidirectional network connection from 900 gigabits per second, 900 gigabytes per second bidirectional to 1.2 T per bidirectional. So a nice increase of the network bandwidth. And was a quite nice press release, and then they all threw that all away when they compared to El Capitan. So that 24x number versus El Capitan is, let's just say, BS.
Just talk through this first.
Okay. So I'll read it quote for quote. When scaled to 9,216 chips per pod for a total of 42.5 exaflops, and that number 425 exaflops is, 42.5 exaflops is FP8, and that's the peak number. Ironwood supports more than 24x the compute power of the world's largest supercomputer, El Capitan, which offers just 1.7 exaflops per pod. Ironwood delivers the massive parallel computing power necessary for the most demanding AI workloads, such as super large size dense LLMs or matrix lobby,
mixture experts. Yeah.
And it continues. Okay, so one, the important thing here is what types of flops and what is your workload. In Ironwood's case, this is a theoretical number. The 42 exaflops is a theoretical number based on the peak compute throughput of TPU v7. Great. Awesome. One, that's FP8, and two, the El Capitan number. One is the LinPack Rmax number, which is an actual workload. It's not a theoretical number. It's an actual workload, and that's FP64 vector. Technically, you could also do matrix, but for reasons that the matrix side of it is not being used, and it's not used in the R peak number for El Capitan, which for FP64 is 2.7 exaflops, not 1.7. So the actual comparison number is 2.7 exaflops. However, that's FP64, which Ironwood cannot run. If you were to actually run El Capitan at FP8, yes, what types of flops, right? That's a 32x increase on the theoretical compute capabilities, which gets you to just under 88 exaflops of FP8 dense compute for El Capitan at approximately 30 megawatts of power. Now, sorry, that big massive rant and yeah, this really grinded my gears something fierce. So going through the calculation here, assuming about 10 megawatts, I know that it's higher than what Google think, but about 10 megawatts of power for the 42 exaflops. That means that to get approximately the same compute capability as El Capitan, a TPU V7 pod will use approximately 33% less power, because it will be about 20 megawatts instead of 30 megawatts, which is nice. Good reduction in power, until you realize that El Capitan and MI300A is a fairly old chip. We know that it was in bring up in July of 2020, June or July of 2022, because we have images from Bring Up Labs, Bring Up MI300A. So great, but honestly, I don't find this a very compelling. Like, this just ruined it to me. Like, I don't understand why Google had to add this. It just,
so
it's infuriating.
Okay, let me put in here, right? This is MI300A, 61.3 teraflops, FP64.
Mm-hmm.
If you compare that to the FP8 with sparsity,
it's approximately 32. With sparsity, is approximately a 64x increase. I was being very clear with the dense. I'm assuming the 48 exaflops is an FP8 dense number. If it's not, then frankly, El Capitan takes a TPU pod and just blows it away. But I would like to believe that Google has designed essentially a custom chip for AI, right, that can do better than what is an all-purpose, can do basically anything you throw at it, multitasking monster like MI300A. Because in theory, you should, the trade-off for a do everything chip is fundamentally that a specialized processor will be able to do something either faster at equal power or same speed but lower power. If that 4800 teraflop number is a sparse number, then frankly, I don't. TPU V7 does not seem very with the times, so to speak, because it wouldn't be very efficient. And for a brand new chip coming out now, or GAing later this year, doesn't seem very compelling.
GA means general availability, as in
yes, thank
on
you.
the market. So what I want to do here is I'm going to put it. So let's just do the difference in AMD's own numbers between their FP64 and their FP8.
Mm-hmm.
So 1.96 petaops of FP8 divided by 61.3 teraflops, and you got a 32x.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go back to that 1.7 times by 32 is 54.
But remember, that's the R max number,
No, I know.
not the R peak number. and our peak number is even higher, which is the comparable number.
Just to clarify, our max is the active workload performance, not the theoretical performance. Yes. So even then, it's but again, you're more performance, but for 50% more power as well. So there is that. So yeah, this is one of the metrics that obviously Google led with. And what has happened here is marketing has compared numbers without understanding what it is. And either it's gone through some engineer who hasn't caught it, or it's gone through some engineer and he said, wait, that's not an honest appraisal. And they've said, we don't give a shit. So Google Willow, billion. Yeah. For some reason, they like comparing to Frontier and El Capitan. So,
it quite frustrating.
Yeah. But so some people have done some analysis, and they're basically saying yes, it looks looking at the performance, it's probably a slightly more efficient B200. The reason why Google gets a bit of efficiency is that they're not running the memory as performant, so it's just a more efficient memory. Though also the way that the TPUs are designed, it's called an architecture known as a systolic array, which for certain workloads is actually really beneficial compared to NVIDIA's SIMD or Tensor Core operations. A systolic array works when you have data the exact size of the array. If you don't have it the exact size of the array, you either have to pad, or you either pad because you're lower, or if you're more, you suddenly have to do a lot more compute with padding. And normally modern processors, what padding means is they just add zeros. So you end up with 0 times 0 plus 0, a lot. A modern GPU will identify those operations and bypass them. Because even if you compute 0 times 0 plus 0, that consumes power. If you can identify that there's a 0, it doesn't matter. And if you bypass, the thing is, if you bypass the math in a systolic array is meant to guarantee that you'll have a set of calculations, then on the next clock, the calculations will be here, or the data will be here. Calculate again, and again, and again, again. It's systolic. It's badum, 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 badum. Thing is, again, if you have 0 times 0 plus 0, it still has to follow that cadence. And you can't just easily bypass it in the same way. However, again, if your arrays fit nicely with the size of the systolic array, they can be quite efficient as a result. One of the things that they introduced, I think they introduced back in V6, back in Trillium, is sparse core. So this is when you're doing large embedding or recommendation workloads. This is things like recommended
Google,
posts,
like YouTube recommendation lists.
Retail.
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
So what product are you going to buy next? That's a recommendation workload. The algorithm on YouTube, the algorithm on TikTok, the algorithm on Instagram, however you consume content. It's, content and purchases are all recommendation engines. Yes, hello. I have a buddy here.
You have a little one. You have a little kitty cat.
Well, little. She's 15. She's purring.
I said little. I didn't say young.
She's actually lost weight recently, so. Oh no, you're stuck in a cable now. She's lost over a kilo in the last year. So been to the vet, it's fine. She was overweight anyway.
Okay.
They also have Pathways, which is a new runtime that allow the way it was described. So I was on the briefing. Like I said, I didn't get invited to Google Cloud Next this year. I was last year. That's when they announced Axion. I missed a few emails mid-year about naming and haven't really engaged with them since. Also, as a hardware-focused person, only 1% of Cloud Next is about hardware. And this is it. So I don't really need to be there for that longer. Performance per chip, solving the AI demands of tomorrow, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So we have the Google.
Yep.
So
the Google. We're at about an hour 40. Do you want to do Z17 or do you want to go to the briefs?
Actually, let's go to Z17. Shall we start with the... Let's start with the slides. Let me get to the right slide first, because some of these I can't show.
Huh.
Let me make sure I get it on the right one.
Yeah, while you're pulling that up. Well, no, I was just going to say, there's some folks in the chat that love my rants, and I'm glad that I could deliver a rant today about TPU. But yeah, moving on to IBM Z17. IBM Z17 is a continuation of the Z lineup, which is a very long-running series dating all the way back to System 360, onto System 370, onto modern-day Z with Telum. And Z17 is Telum 2. The original Telum chip had 8 cores, 8 Telum cores on a Z16 chip with 256 megabytes of L3, L4. If you want more information about how that L2, L3 system works, we have a post on it on Chips and Cheese. But Telum 2 has not actually changed the number of CPU cores. Same 8 CPU cores. The two big additions here are the 360 megabytes of L3, which is 40% increase, along with a DPU. The DPU here is actually very interesting. Now, IBM has what's known as red books, and diving into some of the red books about the DPU, what's really interesting is that
just so people are aware, this is just a big PDF of specifications and features.
But it goes into some very nice detail about it. Basically, it's a manual, and the really neat thing about the DPU is it's a 32 plus 1 channel architecture. So there's essentially 32 channels with one for, I believe, redundancy. And
what you have of what?
So that's just like basically that's your the number of inputs and outputs that it can do.
So you're talking networking, or you're talking
instructions? So hold on, I'm getting there. So what you have to remember about Z and the architectures that predated Z17 is that they ran on a very, very old sort of I/O architecture. I believe it was called channel I/O, and that sort of mapping of I/O does not map well to stuff like PCIe, to modern networking. So essentially what the DPU is really doing is it's simplifying the amount of sort of it's abstracting some of the legacy features that Z has to support so that it can advance into the future moving forward. So this makes it makes implementing stuff like PCIe easier. It makes implementing stuff like network cards easier because it's handling a lot of the sort of more legacy IO stuff that Z again has to still support because of COBOL written back in the 70s that people are still using. But it's different to sort of the more sort of I wish I had grabbed one. Yocto actually has a Bluefield too, which is sort of your modern version of a DPU, right? Networking, and it's basically a system on a chip with a lot of networking. That DPUs exist in order to increase throughput of networking devices. What the DPU here is actually doing is actually trying to reduce words are hard, but basically it's trying to reduce the layers of complexity that you have to go through.
So it reduces friction.
Yes, it doesn't increase throughput, it reduces friction, which sounds very weird, but in the IBM context, it makes a lot of sense. And like here, if you notice, they're not talking about bandwidth increases. They're talking about massive scale-out I/O subsystems, which every server chip has, but they're really talking about latency reductions and power reductions because that's what this is doing.
This used to be provided by an off-die solution,
yes,
as a separate
but now
chiplet, but it was connected through PCIe, so you had upstream issues.
And they've
now
moved it.
Yeah, they put it back on to monolithic. It's a bigger monolithic die.
Yes. Well, no, they've moved that DPU stuff back onto the back onto the die itself instead of having a separate chip that's having to deal with all that infrastructure. Yeah. So the big news with Z17 is that along with AI, with the so this slide was at Hot Chips 2024, and at Hot Chips 2024 they announced Telum 2 along with the Spire. I want to call it Spyro, but it's not Spyro. Spire AI card. This is essentially IBM's internal AI accelerator. There will be up to 192 Spyro cards in a Z17 system if configured as such. Don't quote me on that. But actually,
no, that's right.
Yep. But what's really interesting to me is that each Spire card has 128 gigabytes of LPDDR5 memory, which means that the individual cards are actually quite capable of running some pretty large models. Like a 7dB model quantized at FP8 could easily fit on one of these cards. And something we've been pushing IBM to do, because bring up of the Spire cards was actually done on a standard x86 machine. So there's x86 support for Spire. It's something I asked during a conversation I had with Hillary Hunter, head of IBM Infrastructure, if they would be willing to just sell a Spire card. That was roughly the answer that I got, unfortunately, was unlikely. But if IBM does decide to do it, this would actually be a very interesting card in and of itself. Just as a card to just buy. But
I've told him.
Ian, you were shaking your head.
No,
I know why.
I've told him. You've told him. IBM's business model is systems or consulting, not components.
Yeah.
So it's this is also technically an older generation architecture. It's about 3 years old at this point, because the architecture came out of research. Then they added the enterprise RAS features needed to deploy it in a system. And now it's co-deployed with Z, and we expect it to be co-deployed with Power as well. Jay, thank you for the $5, said, is the use case for Z architecture in 2025 roughly the same as classic mainframe? Now, to answer this, Z now operates as a superset of what it used to. So yes, it still does all the mainframe, it still does all the high availability, all the 8 nines, the less than 3 seconds of downtime in a year, or I think it's like less than 0.3 seconds of downtime in a year. It has all those features. However, they have a series of systems called Linux One, Rockhopper, and Emperor. They haven't announced the ones for this generation yet. However, we expect them to come. We covered the ones for Z16 last generation, and the design is to be rack mountable standard server, integration for standard workloads. It's a market they're getting into, which sounds weird because it kind of impinges on Power as well. But Z brings a number of things to the ecosystem that Power doesn't. Things like high availability, things like the virtualization features of Z, support for Red Hat Enterprise Linux, for example.
And IBM's RAS features are unrivaled by anybody else in the industry. Not Intel, not AMD, let alone basically anyone else. And that to me, that's actually a potential marketing feature of the Spire card, if IBM wants to, is the uptime and the RAS features of the card means for a box sitting at some McDonald's doing some sort of edge inference, it's never going to that card will never go down for not never, but very rarely will you ever have to go service that part. So for a deployment of just, hey, this needs to be at the edge for 10 years, honestly, this is a card that would look very appealing to me.
So I'm not sure if the card has the same level of uptime support. I think a card in a system, the system supports the uptime due to failover.
Okay.
Not necessarily the card individually.
Sure.
You can't put the card in something else to get that.
Still, though, like I said, IBM's RAS features are unparalleled. So this probably has some very good uptime numbers compared to other accelerator cards of this nature.
So I do want to roll things back a bit here and just make some clear definitions, because a lot of what George spoke about is the Telum 2 processor and the Spire chip, which were all announced last year. The launch specifically this week is of the system, which is called Z17. So this is where you have up to 4 racks of system, and the rack gets a new design. Last generation was orange, this one's now in blue. Each chip has 8 cores. You can have 32 chips in a system. However, customer cores are limited to 208, and that's part of the uptime needed. So if a core fails, it has failover, and you can only do that if you have spare capacity. It's like an SSD having over provisioning. So with the new processor, they've also reduced the cabling. They've made it so it's only 4 racks rather than 5. They've also reduced power, new 5 nanometer design, new raw performance, and all the numbers that George went into. And we've covered some of these slides before exactly on the chip. We got more information about how the DPU works. For those really interested in, this has got RISC-V cores in it. So, and then improved caches, Each of these caches, instead of 32 megabytes, are now 36. There's 10 of them instead of 8. The DPU gets one, all the cores get one, and there's quote-unquote one spare, but that's used. We have the virtual L3 and the virtual L4, same as last gen, but now just with more capacity. And I have learned, due to that manual PDF that George was referring to, you can partition the memory as either 36 gigabytes private or 18 private, 18 shared. And that's a that's, I believe that should be flexible at boot time.
Yep.
But that just means you can, depending on how much core-to-core communications, you can reserve some of that cache to act as a native L3 rather than like a virtual L3, essentially.
Which makes a ton of sense depending on the workload in question.
Yeah. And then we have the Spire, and then we have the the Z17. But the main thing was literally it's the system that they've put together. Let's see, how much can I go back up here? I need to go to slide 30. So one of these systems up to 450 billion inference operations a day with 1 millisecond response time. They're driving hard the AI, and you might think, well, what use is AI in a mainframe? And the point is fraud detection, mostly security and fraud detection. And you might think, well, there's only one accelerator on the chip. How is that useful? Or you have to have accelerators. How is that timely? And the point is, the on-chip AI accelerator can run a super small model that might be 60% accurate. And if it hits in the 40%, you send it to the big model on one of the Spire cards. And they've said that the AI accelerator on the card, given the fact that transaction processing is actually a relatively long workload, we're talking millions of cycles, dispatching an AI workload to the AI accelerator might only be 10,000 cycles. So the chance that two cores need the AI accelerator at the same time is pretty low for that workload. Other workloads, may differ. And I will say, like credit card transaction processing, that has to be done so for example, like if I was to use, this is my good old college ID, if I was to scan my go and let's say that this is a credit card and scan it, that transaction has to be sent over the network, transacted, sent back in what? 2 seconds?
Yeah. So this has to be done that quickly, which is also why you would have some level of inference on chip, but also potentially having a bigger model so that for bigger transactions, you may want to send it over just because you never know. So
I spoke with our good friend Chris Berry, who is one of the leads on the Telum 2 and the Z17. You interviewed him at Hot Chips.
I interviewed Christian Jacoby and Susan
Eichhoff.
Thank you. At Hot Chips. I did not interview Chris Berry.
So I did at this event, and we'll get that interview up soon. But we were speaking about use cases for Z. And I'd actually heard the night before one of the PMs. Actually, I'll get what exactly is that guy's position. Let me just. He might hate being called a PM. Principal product manager. There we go. PM, definitely.
Yep.
And he was talking about the fact that they host events where people who are interested in IBM hardware consulting, companies can come and ask questions. It's like a help desk sort of thing. And one company asking about the Z systems was the Pokemon company. The Pokemon Go company.
Oh, okay, that suddenly makes sense.
So
if you the Pokemon company doesn't make sense, but Pokemon Go, that's a different situation.
So George, the question I asked Chris is why exactly would the Pokemon Go company be interested in Z?
Transactions. Fraud detection.
So, but everybody needs that. Is there something different? So my thing was, you need to track millions of players in real time. You had that data is not structured in any stretch of the imagination. You are also doing transactions, yes, but then you've got gyms, you've got battles going on. You need the uptime to support all those people at the same time, but you also need super low response times such that when you get the egg or do your steps or whatever, it hatches or it battles or whatever. Could that be done by an x86 or an ARM server? Probably, but do you need it? Would you rather have it all in line with your transactions at the same time with the uptime? Yeah.
It would make sense to if you could inline everything on the same system. It makes a ton of sense that if you can do it, you would do it.
So when people say what is Z often used for, even IBM, they say transaction processing, banks, airlines. The answer I now tell people is Pokemon Go. It's great. It's great. So yeah, a couple more slides. So this is the IBM momentum. And the interesting thing here is this bottom left-hand graph. So yes, IBM's measuring stuff in MIPS, and I'm sure if James Pryor is still in the chat, he'll have a field day.
AI MIPS is just So
MIPS here is just instruction throughput, right? Performance, whether you want it artificial or real, whatever. But their argument is that they're now selling more Z, more compute, more flops of Z than ever before. And because people say people don't need mainframes, it's a dying market. They're selling more high performance compute than ever.
Exactly. So,
and part of that is having systems that are now rack mountable rather than just custom racks. Part of it is implementing Red Hat Enterprise Linux RHEL. On it.
And we what's funny is if you go back to that red book, they actually say Linux 1 in the red book, if I remember correctly. So we know that Z17 is going to have a Linux 1 system of some kind.
Yeah, and I can share this slide, and you'll love this. Tell me about this.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So when you see a slide like this, what stands out to you?
One, the timeline, and two, the nodes. Yeah, specifically the fact that they have 3-2 nanometer. To me, this implies that Z may be going towards chiplets. Now we saw a roadmap from Power, and Power 12 is also moving towards chiplets. So this does not surprise me that IBM is moving towards a more disaggregated package methodology.
We expect them still to be on Samsung.
Yes.
They're deep partners with Samsung. And yes, 3 to 2 nanometer.
Depending on when this comes out and when they decide to tape out, could Rapidus be a potential partner in the future? Maybe not for ZNext Plus 1, but for ZNext Plus 2?
So I don't think Rapidus has many plans to do like a 1.4, 1.6 or a 1.4, because they're literally only taking the 2 technology. What they'd be doing, arguably, is going from a single patterning to double patterning to get better. So, yeah, and the point here is also we are now at, what, Q1 25? And the end of this graph is 2030.
Yeah.
And so when was Z16 launched? 2 years ago?
Z16, I believe, was launched 2022.
So every 3 years. So we've got 4.7 years to get 2 more versions in, according to this. But there is a line here that says any statements regarding IBM's future direction, intent, or product plans are subject to change or withdrawal without notice.
So the Z16 system mainframe was introduced on April 5th, 2022, which is almost 3 years to the day, or just over 3 years to the day.
Yeah.
That Z17 has been announced. But yes.
Yeah, our good friend Wendell actually spoke to the person in charge of ZNext. So.
Oh, okay.
That's in his video. So. And just a side question, DK says, what time will we get a general purpose RISC-V CPU for desktop and GPU in near future or future? You can get it now.
So yeah, you can get all your NVIDIA cards already have a RISC-V processor management core. I think 4 of them in them. So you can already get them. And I think AMD uses a derivative of RISC-V for their management.
And it might not be any good. But you can
actually, as far as I know, for at least for NVIDIA, AMD's is slightly more specialized. It's not quite RISC-V, but it.
I mean, the performance of the RISC-V system you purchase.
Oh yes.
May not be any good.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, so I have some pictures of Z. You can probably see it in the background here. Let's see if I can present the screen now. Yeah. Share this. Yeah, okay, that's the same picture. So this is what they do. They put 2 chips in a package that's called a dual chip module, DCM. They also have SCMs, but DCM is actually their main product line. This package is actually an interesting aspect ratio. It's longer than it is tall, and that's because it has these SerDes. Well, we believe them to be PCIe extension cables on the side, and there's 2 on each side, which the previous generation didn't have. So,
so I think it may. So I think it's slightly more advanced than that. I think it may be PCIe. It may be Ethernet. It may be some other thing, depending on what that chip needs to run.
So
and what needs to go out to the I/O cabinets.
So these cables purely go out to the I/O cabinets.
Okay. Well, yeah, but what's in the I/O cabinets, right? Is it Spire cards? Is it storage? Is it?
It can be anything.
Yeah, exactly. So
it can be anything. It can be attached by PCIe. Yeah. These are the memory modules.
Oh, yeah.
These are the DDIMMs.
Yep.
Again,
So,
built for failover.
So well, not just that. It's also, yeah. Again, not just that. This is serialized memory. So unlike in client or normal server systems, where you have a whole bunch of channels, and you have to populate all the channels in order to get all the bandwidth, and sometimes you'll have 2 DIMMs per channel. What IBM has is OMI, which essentially can take a whole bunch of memory on cards, basically feed them through a single switch and just straight into a CPU, which allows for easier expandability as well as easier time. We're starting to run into an issue where you can't physically get more and more channels. Like if you've seen a Genoa or a Turin system with 12 channels and 24 DIMMs per CPU, that's a lot of board space. But IBM can save a lot of that board space by making it vertical like this, as well as
defining their own standard.
Yeah. So
is Z actually using OMI? I thought that was just a power thing.
I believe they are using OMI. I would have to go back and reread the Red Book, but I believe they are using OMI.
So Jay says,
look
at all the resistors on the back. This image has Apple IIe energy. So that card there that goes across the back, that's actually power delivery.
Oh, interesting.
And it's on a removable card in case it breaks. Again, serviceability, reliability.
So they're using a big edge connector. Neat. Interesting.
Back in the Z16 systems, there was like 10 of these in a 4-chip rack, a 4 DCM rack. So what other pictures do I have here? So this is the card. They've literally taken a Dremel to it, but they've also taken a Dremel here. And the one thing I want to show you is how thick of a PCB this is.
Yeah, it's thick.
So a modern.
How many layers?
So this is the cheapest motherboard you could buy in the last few years. This costs $20. This is like four layers, maybe 6. Then we have a higher performance one. This is a consumer board with 4 PCIe slots. This is back in the Z77 days, but this is at least 8 layer.
And some modern high-end boards can go up to 12 layers.
Actually, this is 6. This is 6 layer. And you can still get a high performance Z77 on 6 layer. Now, workstation boards with PCIe 4, PCIe 5. Again, as George said, you have 8 layer, 10 layer, 12 layer. With high-end GPUs like B200, they'll be 16 layer, but then on a board of 8 layer, right?
Yeah.
Because
or even 24, like 24 on top of, let's say, 10 or something, right?
To be honest, 24 is really rare. I've not seen a 24 ever, I think.
I thought B200 was 24.
No, I think it's still 16. I have seen a 32 before. This is at least 64. The thing is, when you go from 4 to 6, right? Yes, you're adding 50% cost. You're also perhaps putting in 2-ounce copper layers. Sure. Thing is, if you go from 6 to 8, that's also another 50% cost. 8 to 10 is another 50% cost. 10 to 12 is another 50% cost. Keep doing that to 64 freaking layers.
Yeah.
This is insane. I'm pretty sure they don't need all of these. Maybe some of these layers are redundant.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would not be surprised if there's redundancy in here.
The thing is, this PCB is so thick, you can measure the PCB in freaking rack units.
That's a first. How many rack units thick is your PCB?
0.4 rack units. What the hell?
That's amazing.
I mean, look. So this is a standard PCIe connector. This thing here, right? This is a PCIe like by 1 or by 2 or whatever. This is actually where the power goes in, or whatever. The PCB is almost as tall as the freaking connector.
This is why IBM engineering does some insane stuff, and I love it.
The thing, actually, no, that's not a piece. Maybe that's like an old PCI connector.
I think that might be connectors for extra DDIMMs.
No, I know, but where's my
Is that an X4?
Pure
Pure water cooling my PCBs. Yeah.
So this is the G1 Sniper 3. Because I saw somebody saying, is that the G Assassin G1? I have the Assassin G1 somewhere. This is my NVIDIA PCB ruler. And so a PCIe slot, not a PCIe slot, is 14 millimeters. What's 14? What's 14 millimeters in rack units?
I was going to say, what's a rack unit? I think a rack unit is 1.75 inches.
So it's 44.45 millimeters. So 14 divided by 44.45, 0.314 rack units.
So what you're saying is that PCB is thicker than my P. So I heard you like some PCB.
That PCB is thick. Oh yeah. So yeah,
but yes,
the minute I saw this on display, I was like, "What the?" Yeah.
What the WTF moment.
Yeah. So we had some more pictures.
Dummy thick PCB. Yes, dummy thick PCB.
Yeah. Stacked. So. And here's a proper image of a black hole in case anybody was interested. Let's see. So let's go over some of the other stuff I've actually got images for while we're here. This is a IMEC optical photonics wafer, 300 mil. I knew they had a 200 mil line. Looks like they've now got a 300 mil line. Intel had some photonics stuff at OFC. So this is their co-packaged optics. They've got a 4 terabit per second optical chiplet. Now, they have provided funding to a company called Ayar Labs, which we've featured on the channel. But this is not Ayar Labs' technology. They have silicon photonics for transceivers up to 1.6.
If you could go, that CPU on the right looks a lot like Xeon Phi with OmniPath. So if you didn't know, OmniPath was Intel's scale-out fabric, sort of similar to InfiniBand, that they then spun off to and sold the IP to Cornelis Networks. But yes, it looks a lot like that that Ian has there. That's OmniPath integrated directly onto a Xeon Phi chip.
Except this is electrical, that's optical.
Yep.
And it also looks like a Sapphire Rapids. So again, it's just a concept, it's just a mock-up. And then they had, so they had, these are what optical chiplets look like. So that was Intel at OFC. We also saw an optical circuit switch. So this is when you don't need transceivers for your data center, and you just plug in the single mode fiber instead. This exists. Broadcom gave a roadmap. So this is their co-packaged optics. If I have a grind to bear, it's the fact that so many people thought that what NVIDIA was doing on optics was revolutionary. And I've seen people continuously post again and again and again. NVIDIA's amazing. They're doing optical switches. They're doing CPO. When they're not really doing CPO, they're doing OBO. And like, oh, nobody's ever done this before. This is paving a way for a new industry. I'm like, Broadcom taped out in 22.
Yeah.
Seriously, if you're being intentionally ignorant about what else is in the market because you want to big up NVIDIA, who is paying you?
Yeah.
And I say this as an analyst. Who the hell is paying you? If one, you refuse to acknowledge what else exists in the market, or two, because you don't freaking know. But three,
well, if you don't know, then be quiet. Don't say anything, please.
No. Promote the fact that yes, okay, they're set to deploy later this year. The minute you characterize it as the next big thing in compute,
well,
God.
yeah, it,
and then you get 100,000 views in your video. What a freaking pain. It's recognize that there's more industry going on, and there's a conference of 15,000 people talking about it. Broadcom also has XPU attach. Broadcom only has 1M.
Okay.
It's all right. We're just going through some short stuff here anyway. This is Ayar Lab. So this is Ayar Labs, their new 8 terabit per second UCI chiplet.
We saw that at Supercomputing. I think I have a short on it.
The 8 terabit one?
Yeah,
I think they had.
I couldn't say it was 8 terabit. I could say that the next generation was a 2x over 4 terabit per second.
They had the 16 wavelength laser.
Yes. This is cool.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you saw this.
I saw the press release for it. Yeah.
They did a separate press release for this.
Yeah. They did a press release for the 8 terabit chip, and then the press release for this.
What did they say for this?
They were talking about how it. So what this is essentially a whole bunch of lasers put into one box, so that you can just feed out to multiple. You have your top of rack switch, and then you have this, which is acting as your laser source for all of your other optical fibers in a rack, essentially.
So the way to describe this is, whenever you have an optical chiplet, you need a light source, a laser light source. And either you can co-package the light source or put it next to whatever you need on the PCIe card or the switch, or you have something that's removable or external, but because it's light, it doesn't matter. So if you have a rack of things that require lasers, reserve 1 or 2 U just for a laser source. And this is 64 lasers in a box that can be used as sources. And all it essentially is, this is a mock-up. This isn't, for example, I turned around and said, actually, for each set of 4, they should be on removable sleds. And then you can have a power brick on, a power set connecting the 4. So if one fails, you can just replace a sled and it's easy. You can hot swap it. But also it has like a control board. I made a joke and say you should make that a Raspberry Pi. But that's just like a networking monitoring thing, just to monitor that all the lasers are going, and that you have a way to read that out. And the point here is that you can put a petabit of laser in a 2U. So how many of these do you need to have all of Google's data in a day?
A lot. Wait, 3?
It's about that.
I thought Google was in the order of like hundreds of petabits per day.
Or a
in
rack,
terms of
whatever.
data movement.
But it's not thousands and thousands stretched across the world. You can do it pretty easily with a few of these. That's the point. And that's what optical brings to the table. And they also showed off this. This is a video. So this is 2 of their UCIe chiplets just packaged so that you can connect from one to another. This is just showing the UCIe link.
Okay. Neat.
It can connect to itself, which is a vital part of any design. Intel. We also have Light Matter. So Light Matter had 2 announcements. One is a optical chiplet, but this is an optical chiplet plus an alpha wave electrical chiplet. And they're saying this can be 64 terabit per second. What we don't see here is the laser, and the laser's bigger than my phone. But the thing is, the laser can do 8 of these. And I said, well, for a laser that big, right? It can power 8. So I said, well, how big's the laser that needs to power 1? And they said same size. We haven't miniaturized it yet. This is an alpha wave electrical chiplet as well, and this is essentially an extension of their Passage optical interposer, which is their other product. This. So right now, when we're talking about co-packaged optics, we're talking about chiplets that are connected straight to the die, right? HBM is like a chiplet essentially in that context. Here, what they've taken is they've taken the interposer and made the interposer optical. So if you put 8 compute dies on the interposer, they communicate each other optically. The problem is you've got to manage the light, the power, and depending on how you build your light source, that could be thermally sensitive. But this is really the only serious company that's looking at optical interposers. And the idea being that if you have an interposer, it's a lot easier to do chip to chip. The thing is, you have to have your known good die. Your manufacturing has to be spot on. I don't want to know about the yields. So, of this thing. Apparently, this design built for 8 compute chiplets. That's why you have 8 pairs of optical fibers coming out. Was apparently designed for a client. They won't say who. The client has working samples, but now they're opening the technology up to everyone. And the optical chiplet, is a derivative of that.
And the optical chiplet, sort of circling back all the way back to the 200G SerDes comments, is using alpha wave either 56 or 112G SerDes, 320 lanes.
So the other thing wasn't shown at OFC, but again was this announced, is this optical compute. So this is photonic computing. So doing math with photons and then processing the analog to digital. So here we have their chip called Envise. It's 4 photonic cores with systolic arrays. The idea is that you're running neural networks, and they've been showing this chip off for 4 years, but they recently just had a paper in Nature about it because some other companies are starting to do it as well. And the accelerator card looks like this on the left, and you've got just the individual chip on the right. Let's see if I have all the other photos here. I need all my Envise photos there. Second. Yeah. It's handy when I have everything to hand. Okay. So you have this chip. They put this chip into this server, right? And this, so they wouldn't let me look and see inside the server. And what you have at the end of the day is this video that we saw right at the beginning. So this chip is running a neural network on the left. It's like a very basic CNN. Systolic array is only 256 by 256. And the idea is that you're feeding it the data from the visual, and it's playing the game. It's not running the game, it's playing the game. So can it run Doom? No. Can it play Doom? Maybe. And what you have here on the right is how many frames is it inferencing per game, and how many points is it scoring per game. So I believe I have a close-up of that. So you can see some games it's inferencing over 10,000 frames. At what frame rate? I don't know. They didn't say. And it's scoring, 600-700 points. They're calling this the Atari simulator. And this is the model, right? So the input is an 84 by 84, so 84 square pixels at 4 bits per pixel. It's doing math inside, convolution, ReLU, flatten, gem, and then it outputs one of 9 results of what it should do on that frame. So left, right, restart, fire, wait. And some of these might be combinations of outputs, such as left plus fire, right plus fire. So it's a very simple CNN, this model. And yeah, the end result is gaming with light. Just don't ask how much power it takes, because the power of the chip is probably very good. Once you add in the power of the laser, once you add in the power of the system, the power per flop probably ain't that good. But it's a proof of concept, not a product. And initially the goal of the company was to productize this, and it turns out you need a lot more than what they can do to do it. So there's that. Do I have the no, I don't. So many more photos I need to copy over just to make sure. Let me just double check. Events Earthsea. I found the company that did the tech coolers for Intel. They're called Phenonic. Yeah, okay. And this company.
Cognifiber?
Cognifiber. Which sounds like a company that sells fibers, not a computing company. What they're doing is they're using, I believe, I got a bad explanation because I just walked up to the booth and their CEO spent 10 minutes with me. And I think I'm waiting for I may have the slide deck actually that they were showing. They're using the light interference in a fiber to do the compute. So you know how some compute in memory solutions will, you can set it up so every time you push data to memory, it will do a left shift. Or it will do an add. The idea is that if you send data down the fibers, it will do an operation when so by the time it reaches its destination, it's done a series of operations. Thing is, you can multiply this out to do matrix multiply if you have the right set of configuration for fibers. they're going to do that. They've already got predictions on, what matrix size they can do, what the latency is going to be, what the throughput's going to be. So power here says like 6,500 tops per second. What sort of tops? Don't ask. It's light. Who knows? It's analog tops. It's FP Infinite. Just don't tell me what your
it's A tops.
Just don't tell me what your analog to digital converter bit depth is. Right, data rate of 100 gigahertz as well, because you can run stuff down the fiber. And compute accuracy of 94%. So what should it be digitally versus what do we obtain optically? Excuse me. And part of that is, manufacturing reliability and such. So, yeah, it's, I didn't get, yeah, I was waiting for the slide deck. I do need to check, but they want to sell $50 million computers in 10 years.
I mean, if it works well and can scale up, then mayhaps.
How much did El Capitan cost? 300 mil, something like that.
500 mil.
Yeah, so you'd only get 10 of these.
Yep.
Yeah. So some of the numbers didn't add up, basically.
Yeah.
So I guess I guess that's pretty much all the pictures I wanted to show, because ASA, we've been on the road for a while. We had some tech boxes as well. We don't have brief news stories. We have boxer news stories. Let me share this screen if I can. What does this say, George? What are we expecting here?
So, join AMD CEO Lisa Su and leaders across the AI ecosystem to discuss AMD's bold vision for AI and announce the next generation of AMD Instinct GPUs and AMD ROCm open software ecosystem progress. Watch live at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time on June 12th. So they don't come out right and say it, but this is MI355X announcements.
So
most likely.
AMD does an event every year called Advancing AI.
Mm-hmm.
Last year it was in October. The year before that it was in December.
It was in December.
So now they're going for June. So it's getting earlier. And typically with every Advancing AI, they announce they showed their next gen AI chip. It's going to be a bit early for CPUs, isn't it? For Zen 6.
Zen 6 is not expected to be out until next year. So this is almost certainly just going to be Instinct and Instinct alone, in terms of hardware. But there may be some updates on the networking side.
But the acquisition of ZT Systems just completed.
Yes, I forgot about that. You're right. ZT Systems did just get acquired by AMD. The plan is still to... So the acquisition of ZT Systems went through. The EU did not prevent the acquisition, because that was potentially up for some debate if they were going to step in and stop it. But what AMD is doing with ZT Systems is they are essentially going to take the design side of ZT Systems and then spin off the manufacturing side. So this is to help AMD build essentially rack scale to fight like I would say NVL72, but with the new naming scheme, they technically already have a 64 GPU system, as we talked about last time. But yeah.
So they acquired CT for $5 billion. They announced it last year. It's completed now because acquisition goes through a phase where has to make sure it's not anti-competitive to acquire somebody. That completed. The manufacturing side of ZT is actually about $4 billion worth. So it's about 80% of that acquisition. Yeah. So the design services is about $1 billion of that cost. So that will be done. They also have. I met the ex-CEO of Nod.ai. One of their software. They were. He was around the Bay Area while I was there. So I literally only really had time to say hi. But he's more than up to have a chat at any time to talk about AMD's software expertise, especially. I believe they're going to be focusing on the training side for AMD this year. So it's also about customer enablement, right? Part of the acquisition. So so that's coming June 12th. Unfortunately, I am already at an event, so I will not be able to make it.
I will be there with any luck. So
it's also in tech boxes. The Switch 2 was announced. $450. People said that's expensive. Given that the SNES was $179, the PlayStation was $199, the 3DS was $200. So why are we now doing $450 handheld consoles, given that PS5 and Xbox is cheaper? And the answer's, despite the hardware being slightly worse, it sounds like it's going to be an enhanced version of Tegra with better ARM cores and Ampere. 1536 CUDA cores, I think, was reported. Whether that's confirmed or not, I don't know. And third generation RT cores. So there may be some upscaling. I also read that some Switch 1 games will not be able to be emulated. Some may need a lot of work. Others should be fine. However, you may have to pay a fee to have your game enabled on the Switch 2.
Why?
For the work that needs to go in to support it, and make sure that a higher frame rate doesn't kill it. So
okay.
Games for the Switch 2 sound like stuff's going to increase. So your new Zelda, your new Mario may be now $80, which is paving the way for GTA 6 to come in at $100.
Oh,
so
goody.
It's it's. I won't reiterate everything that they said on the WAN show about this, but if you bought the Switch plus 6 games and played it a week for 6 years, the cost per hour is amazing. I mean, gaming is one of the cheapest things you can do if you do it for an hour a day or an hour a week or whatever the metric they had was. So that, and if you look at the cost of games over the years, the cost, adjusted for inflation, games have gotten cheaper. So it going back up, but also at a time of tariff crisis and whatever. So the Switch 2 launch date is the same, but due to the tariffs, the pre-orders in the US have been pushed back. As in, when you are able to pre-order it, they should still be in your hands at the same date. And I think that's just a case of understanding which retailers are going to get how much stock. Because of the tariffs, they have to, watch out. Hello Kitty Island Adventure, now $100.
Jesus.
Barbie's Dream House. Or Skyrim.
How many releases of Skyrim are we on now?
Yes, that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's switch 2. Llama. We also had Llama 4. So the next generation AI models. What is it? There was Llama 4, Scout, Maverick, and Behemoth. This is a first for Llama 4. Instead of being dense transformer models, they're now a mixture of experts. So this is 100 billion parameters, 400 billion parameters, and 1.6 trillion parameters. But the active parameters is, at least for Scout and Maverick, is 17 billion. So it's quick to compute. You still need a device that will fit them all in. So a hopper will support Scout at 4-bit precision, for example. One hopper. Performance metrics have been good, great. Accuracy metrics have been terrible. As in, and this may be because it's the first mixture of experts Llama Direct. There have been some mixture of experts derivatives of other older Llamas, but these are coming out as mixture of experts first. So there's a little bit of that to cover. A little bit of that. That's interesting. Do you want to talk about UA Link?
Yeah, so UA Link, we've talked about them in the past. They're essentially the industry competitor to NVLink. NVLink being NVIDIA's scale-up fabric. UA Link is the industry's way to fight, is essentially the industry's response to NVLink. And it's going to be basically everyone who's anyone in the industry is a part of UA Link. AMD, Intel, Google, Microsoft, Meta, Cisco, Arista, Broadcom rejoined.
Oh, really?
There's some, they rejoined a couple months ago.
Sounds personal.
I don't know what happened there, but something happened. Anyway, they've rejoined, and Tenstorrent is actually part, as is Apple, interestingly enough. But UA Link is actually, if you guys know AMD's Infinity Fabric, also known as XGMI, UA Link is XGMI derived fabric. And what they announced also on the same day as Z17 was the 200G spec was announced. So that's going to be the UA Link 1.0 spec on 200G SerDes. We talked about this previously about how IEEE still doesn't have 200G SerDes, that spec ratified until it's not planning to be ratified until next year. This is the industry is essentially saying, hey, we need this, and we're going to basically support 200G SerDes for UA Link off the bat.
Did you get briefed on this?
I did.
It must have been lost in the mail. Either that, or I missed it. I missed the email because I was traveling.
I reached out to them. We actually had a good talk at Supercomputing, and then I think that's why they reached back out. Spoke to Curtis Bowman at Supercomputing 24.
I mean, I've spoken to Curtis a few times because he used to be obviously on the Infinity Fabric side of things. So
so to talk a little bit more about the specification, up to 10,024 accelerators is supported.
Which is a lot less than a TPU.
Yes,
TPU was 9,000.
If you think about it from Google is also weird because they are network. Yes, but here's the thing. If you're doing rack scale, which is what they're focusing on, 1024 is actually kind of overkill.
For scale up.
Yeah, for scale up. For scale out, they basically say the industry's using Ultra Ethernet. They are actually in talks with Ultra Ethernet for better cooperation between the two. And yeah,
this is great,
yeah.
Chris. Broadcom
Yeah.
doesn't see being difficult to work with as well. At OFC, they didn't have a booth, but they had a massive meeting area that was the size of a booth, but with panels all around, and you could only get in if you had a meeting. They had presentations on the outside, and that's where my slides came from. But yeah, Broadcom never seemed to want to do, industry analyst type things. Marvell do.
That's good.
Broadcom doesn't.
Yeah. But basically,
same thing with Cadence, really.
Basically, it's 1024 links, and each of those links could be up to 800 gigabit per second, and you can have multiple. So, like, you could have a series of 4 links, that come together, and basically, sorry, my brain is running at 17 million miles a minute. Basically, this is the competitor to NVLink. That's what you need now.
Yes.
And it's running on 200G SerDes, which IEEE hasn't ratified yet.
So
that's what you need now.
When give us a timeline for when the first UA Link 1.0 devices will be coming to market.
So Broadcom said that they'll have public availability of essentially a switch chip in 2027, but I kind of suspect that there will be at least stuff for like AMD and Intel internally to use in like a rack level system earlier than that. When earlier, I don't know. Potentially MI355, but I kind of doubt that it's going to be that fast. I would expect the intersection to be more along the lines of MI400. So
yeah. It's do I have certain pictures? No. Again, I need more pictures. I want to. Oh, why hasn't stuff uploaded? Google Drive is annoying me today. Is it uploaded here? No, it didn't upload there either. Annoying. When you're not on Google Drive in the app, it stuff pauses for some reason.
Yeah.
The last boxes to bring up, I think, is Intel Vision. Because we did get a keynote from Lip-Bu. Lip-Bu did, he was on the stage. All he had to do was tell the community, A, who he was, and B, he understands Intel. So he had to reel off his background. So Cadence, 15 years CEO of Cadence, member of the board of a lot of tech companies in the space, and was a principal at Walden International, where he invested in over 250 startups, of which something like 65, 70 had some form of exit, which is a 1 in 4 hit rate, which for the industry is actually pretty amazing. Typically, a 1 in 10 is considered average, so 1 in 4 is good.
So
well, hang on just a second. The other part of his presentation was just simply, I understand where Intel's benefits are. He's only been in the job 2 weeks, even though he'd been on the board for a couple of years. We weren't expecting any big announcements. He just had to say, if there is a blind spot, I know where it is. And you could argue where Intel's blind spots are, but he said, it's client, it's enterprise, and it's foundry. This is where Intel's core markets are, and we need to drive them. And that was a 35-minute presentation, not a 2 hour plus from Jensen, which is more his style. So that's all he had to do at Vision for being 2 weeks in the job.
So
he got an 8 out of 10 from most people that I was sitting next to.
He, to me, he focused too much on the investment side. He
was in a room of investors and customers.
Sure, but to me, what he needed to do was sell himself to Team Intel. He needed to say, this is who I am, and this is how I'm going to try and... He started going down that road, and then he sort of, like, took a left turn.
Well, he had to explain who he was, because if you go read other YouTubers' coverage of who he is, they don't know who he is. They see him as the guy who did a nuclear physics degree 35 years ago and used that as an excuse to complain about hotspots on consumer CPUs. And like, do you not know what he did in the last 35, 40 years? Or don't know what Cadence does? It looks like they're a software acquisition company. Right? The point is, the audience was full of people like that. So he had to explain his business credentials. You know, he is an engineer by trade, but he's also somebody who's done well in business. And at some level, running a company is running a business. It helps if you've been in the same industry before, and he has. So where exactly do you think the left turn was?
So to me, the left turn was that was when he started getting emotional about Intel, and to me that was really good because he started talking about what he saw were the weaknesses in how they could like come together and sort of build off and improve off each other, which was really good. And then he kind of started talking about some other things, and I kind of lost him at that point. If he had continued down that track, I think personally I would have reverberated with it more, and that's what I've heard from some folks at Intel is that emotional part really like it sort of dug deep to folks at Intel, and like they reverberated with that, but after it sort of teetered off and
it's part of it is product and the other part is people.
Yeah.
Right. And he spoke a good chunk of product. He said about the people he wants to reshape Intel into a startup again. Part of that is by being a bit more aggressive in cutting businesses that aren't the core business. But he also said he wants to foster innovation, which I felt was a little weird. But it's he also has a lot of reach in the industry. I think the left turn that I saw more is that he is on the board of a lot of companies, some of whom are competitors to Intel.
Yeah.
Or not obviously not top to bottom stack, but in this one niche that Intel also plays in, they are the main competitor to Intel. We just saw optical photonics chips, right? He's on the board of directors of Celestial.ai, who are making photonics chips.
Yeah.
So
you're right. I completely forgot about that announcement. But yeah, that came out late June? Sorry, late January. Excuse me, late January of this year.
But there's several companies in that position. We're actually in the middle of. I've commissioned another article for John to basically go through all of LitBlue's board positions, even the previous ones, just to showcase what his background is and what companies he's been involved in. And if we don't know about those companies, what those companies do. Right. Because he has to have, he has a lot of a wide knowledge. And a kickback was that he did speak a lot about the companies he's on the board with who may or may not be competitors to Intel. So but other
So,
it was also short.
Yeah.
But he was so he said he'd been in the job 2 weeks.
Yeah, like it was to me a 6.5 out of 10.
So the Intel Foundry event on the 29th, he has the keynote for that as well.
Okay. I want to see what that's like. But did you watch the Intel product announcement live stream that was run by MJ the next day? It was April 1st.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I actually didn't get much sleep that night. So I should have been there in person, but instead I had to live stream it because my bag arrived from the airport at 2 a.m.
Did you know that they privated that video?
Really?
Yeah. You want to know why?
Who said?
Well, so they had an AI startup who was working with with military, and he said when talking about quote unquote warfighters in the F-35, it's better to make the wrong decision immediately than the right one later. And everybody just went, "What the?"
That passed me by.
Because yeah.
You can cut that. You can cut that out.
Well, no, because that was being talked about live. It was a live stream.
No, but after the stream, you can cut it out in YouTube.
Sure, but they just privated the video. I don't know if the video's back up, but they privated the video. Yeah, it was
yeah, well that's not an Intel.
No, but like the fact that they were saying, "Oh, we're using Intel products for this," is like yeah.
That line is very Simpson Schwarzenegger. I came to lead,
not to read. Yes.
Yeah, it's part of the problem. Part of the problem with bringing partners on stage, always, and especially ones that are in defense, which is why almost to a certain extent, NVIDIA doesn't do it. Because their hardware is being used for nuclear reactor research.
Oh yeah, modeling. I mean, let me put you this: like AMD was not.
Yes.
There was no hiding what El Capitan is about, but there's a difference between El Capitan and using an AI to determine what should happen in a scenario.
Yes. Well, it's and if you ever go to an event where the keynotes are by Raytheon, by Lockheed Martin, by Boeing,
yeah,
right. Chances are you're going to sign an NDA to even apply to get into the event. It makes me funny that there's this YouTuber called Max Fosh. He's a bit of a comedian, but he likes to play pranks, but not ones in where people get offended or outed or whatever. And he went into a defense contractors trade show. And I think he managed to get his own pass, because obviously people post passes on Instagram, so you can kind of get their number. And on his badge, he was called Rob Banks.
That's brilliant.
And you it's like no photos inside, but he got a security guy to take a photo of him. He handed his own security guy and said,
"Amazing,
can you take a photo of me?" And the security, because obviously security guy is contractor. But yeah, so that'd be an interesting trade show to go to. The defense.
So I think we should probably head to the Q&A.
Yeah. if anybody's got any Q&A, please dump it in the chat.
There's some here.
I think we covered most of this.
Yeah. So just for the record, Liquid R isn't the current Congress and admin killing the CHIPS Act. So Congress would have to pass a bill that essentially defunds the CHIPS Act. That hasn't happened. So technically the CHIPS Act is still law.
Yeah, because the CHIPS Act is a law, you can't negate it with a presidential order. So
yeah. So
yeah, you have to ask why am I not there for PDX LAN? Dude, I've just spent 10 days out of the last 2 weeks in the US. My wife is going to visit her family for Orthodox Easter at the weekend. And then after that, after she comes back, I've got events to go to, and then we've got Computex, and then I'm going to VLSI, and I've got to spend some time at home, and I'm actually way behind on work. So, if it was at a time when I was already in the US and I had a few days free, unfortunately I don't. But all that has to be planned 6 months in advance, and nobody knows what the hell events are going on 6 months in advance.
Nope, which is annoying to me.
I mean, I literally just booked Computex this week, and I tried to book the same hotel Cheese is staying in, one right next to the convention center. One I booked last year for like $100 a night. They wanted $600 a night. Right now, so I had to, but in Taipei, I managed to. So you remember 2 years ago?
Yes.
I stayed in a location which had a private hot spring onsen.
Yes.
But it was an hour and a half away.
You said that was a mistake.
So that was also about $100 a night. But given that a private onsen is about $60 for an hour and a half, and you have one in your room, if using it every night makes easy sense. I found a hotel downtown with private onsens.
Oh, nice.
It's about the same. It's like literally 2 minutes away from the hotel Future used to put me up in. So there's that restaurant I took you to, which is right nearby.
Nice.
So it's literally in that same place. So it'll take me again 30-35 minutes to get to the venue.
Hey, that's better than an hour and a half. Also, Mr. Viptis, no, there's not going to be an onsen episode. No, I veto that immediately.
So he is referring to the fact that, was it 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, Kyle from Bitwit did all of his Computex videos from the bath.
Of course.
Dom asks, so Dom, who again you saw him in the back room, he does the camera, he does the horizontals and verticals. He's the director and video editor as well. He's coming, so I booked him as well. He says, "Are we going to Ramen Ultra again?" Which is what's the MRT station? Is it like literally called Nangang Exhibition Center?
Yes, Nangang.
Yeah, no, but there's Nangang and there's Nangang Exhibition Center. They're two different stations.
No, it's the same station, I think.
No, because it's one stop away.
No, the one below the hotel, I don't think it's called Nangang.
Yeah. I'm right. It's so there's Nangang and there's Nangang Exhibition Center. This is Nangang MRT.
Okay.
Which is where the hotel is. It's one. It's it's a walk. It's a very short walk. The thing is, it's also 110 degrees and 90% humidity, so you don't want to walk.
No.
But it's one of these things where you've got like 4 or 5 basement floors of mall, And in there is a place called Ramen Ultra, literally the best ramen I've ever had. Really cheap, run by a Japanese family, it seems.
It's amazing.
Last time, I think I went there in a week 4 times, maybe only 3.
Sounds about right.
It's also a big bowl of food.
Mm.
The thing is, they do shut a little early. I think like 8. So you have to.
So
yes, we will be going.
Yeah. Well, I'm starving, so I was about to wrap this up. I was just going to say that there's also going to be a couple more people from C&C other than just me there. So hopefully, maybe some lots of video content, maybe.
So, Andy's based in Australia, isn't she? So.
Yeah. Andy's coming. Brutus and is going as well. My video editor, who was also there last year, Captain, is also going, and one other person.
Schmalv wants to come.
Anyway, I'm starving. I need food.
Me too. It's almost 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I think this is a good place to wrap it up.
Sweet.
So, thank you all for joining us on the 22nd episode of the Tech Poutine. I'm George from Chips and Cheese.
And I'm Ian from Tech Potato.
I bring the cheese, he is the chips, and if we have a guest, then they are the gravy. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Go view. Oh, I have a kitty cat. Okay. I apparently have a kitty cat now. Go subscribe to Chips and Cheese, the Substack and the YouTube. Go subscribe to Ian's Tech Potato and More the More YouTube channel and Substack respectively. And have a good one, folks.
See ya. If you like this content, there are multiple ways to support the channel. You can like and subscribe this video, and many thanks for doing so. There's also Patreon, which gives you access to our Discord. There's a merchandise store and a newsletter, links in the description. For all of you who do contribute, thank you. You are keeping me well fed.